Hello, students. We continue with the second part of the singing lesson by Catherine Mansfield. Now, we were in our last video, we were doing the song which was being sung by the students of Miss Meadows, and Miss Meadows is standing in front of them, and the wordings of the song are somehow getting related to her thoughts. So, let's see what she is thinking and in what way her mental process is going on while she is conducting the music class. Good heavens, what would be more tragic than that lament? That lament, referring to the song, the lamenting song, she had already asked her children to sing a sad autumnal song, and so she is likening it to her present mental condition. Every note was a sigh, a sob, a groan of awful mournfulness. Miss Meadows lifted her arms in the white gown and began conducting with both hands. What is she doing? She is conducting the music lesson by waving her hands. She is holding the baton in one hand and she is raising her arms and lowering them from time to time with the beat. And in this way, she is guiding the students as they are singing the song. So I feel more and more strongly that our marriage would be a mistake. Once again, she's thinking about that line which Basil had written in his letter to her, that it would be a mistake on his part if he decided to marry her. She beat, and the voices cried, "Fleetly, ah, Fleetly." What could have possessed him to write such a letter? What could have possibly be the reason why Basil wrote such a letter to her? Something must have possessed him or got over him, because of which he wrote such a letter, because it was most unexpected for her that Basil would write such a letter. It was like a bolt from the blue for Miss Meadows. What could have led up to it? It came out of nothing. It came out of nothing. There was no prior warning, there was no prior indication that Basil was likely to write a letter like that. And suddenly that letter comes, and it's too much for Miss Meadows to accept. His last letter had been all about a fumed oak bookcase he had bought for our books. So when a man decides to get married, when a man is engaged, he starts buying things so that once they get married, they have to settle down. They must have everything necessary to start their life together, all the furniture, all the necessary items that are required in a household. So he had already started thinking about buying a bookcase for our books. The word our is within inverted commas because it implies the books belonging to both Basil and Miss Meadows when they become husband and wife. And a natty little hall stand he had seen, a very neat affair with a carved owl on a bracket. And then he had also spoken about a hat stand with an owl in the center, a wooden owl with, three hat brushes in its claws. How she had smiled at that, so like a man to think one needed three hat brushes. From the listening ear sang the voices. Once again, said Miss Meadows, she was not as if she was not happy with the singing of the children. Though the children were singing properly, Miss Meadows was distracted. And because she was distracted, she was asking them to sing again and again. And she wanted to continue with her distraction as the children sang. The song must go on, the class should go on, and she can then continue to think. Once again, but this time in parts. Sing part by part, still without expression. Still, your song is not with proper expressions, so I want more emphasis on expression. Fast, ah, too fast. With the gloom of the contraltos added, one could scarcely help shuddering. Fade the roses of pleasure. Last time he had come to see her, Basil had worn a rose in his buttonhole. How handsome he had looked in that bright blue suit with that dark red rose, and he knew it. too. He couldn't help knowing it. First, he stroked his hair, then his moustache. His teeth gleamed when he smiled. She's thinking about the time when she had met Basil, the last occasion on which they had met. She's thinking about that time. He was wearing a blue suit. He was wearing a rose. He was wearing a dark red rose in his suit buttonhole, and he looked so handsome, etc., etc. She is, constantly thinking about their relationship, how it was till before she received this letter. The headmaster's wife keeps on asking me to dinner. It's a perfect nuisance. I never get an evening to myself in that place. But can't you refuse? Oh well, it doesn't do for a man in my position to be unpopular. So the headmaster's wife, Basil, had complained. Basil works in a different school and he has a boss, the headmaster. And the headmaster's wife keeps inviting Basil for dinner. And he does not like it because he does not feel very comfortable when he goes to the residence of the headmaster. So Miss Meadows says, but can't you refuse? Then you could possibly refuse to go. If you don't like going there, then why do you go? And then Basil says, well, I don't want to be unpopular. After all, she is the boss's wife. So it would definitely give some displeasure to my boss if I don't go. So that's why I go. Music's gay measure wailed the voices. The willow trees outside the high, narrow windows waved in the wind. They had lost half their leaves. The tiny ones that clung wriggled like fishes caught on a line. I am not a marrying man. Once again, well, she looks out of the window. There are tall windows in the school building, and when she looks out, it's perfect autumn weather outside, and the willow trees can be seen outside. There was an amount of wind blowing outside, because of which the willow trees and their branches were moving, swaying from side to side. And Miss Meadows once again thinks about that particular line written in that letter by Basil. I am not a marrying man. The voices were silent. The piano waited. What happened actually? The children had finished singing once again. Quite good, said Miss Meadows, but still in such a strange stony tone that the younger girls began to feel positively frightened. But now that we know it, we shall take it with expression. Once again, she's talking about expression. Quite good, she says, quite good, in a very cold manner, in such a cold manner that it makes the little girls feel scared of her. Maybe she means just the opposite. Maybe she is not happy with the singing. That's what the children think. Ma'am is not happy. That's why ma'am is speaking sarcastically. Very good, quite good. Well, that is not really the case. The children don't understand what's going on in Miss Meadows' mind. And she says, now that you have understood the song fully, start singing once again with proper expression. She had already said this earlier, and the children had tried their level best to sing with expression. But Miss Meadows obviously was not listening, and now once again she tells them to sing with expression. You see, the frustration of rejection by Basil comes out on the children in this manner. She tries to verbally torture the children when she tells them to sing once again. They are little kids and they have sung so many times already, and yet their ma'am is not happy with their singing. She's asking them to sing again. As much expression as you can put into it. Think of the words, girls. Use your imagination. Fast, too fast, cried Miss Meadows. That ought to break out. A loud, strong fort, a lament. That line, fast, too fast, has to be sung in a very proper lamenting manner. You have to break it out of the rest of the lines and draw it out and sing it out in such a manner that it truly sounds like a lament. And then in the second line, winter drearer, make that drearer sound as if a cold wind were blowing through it. Drearer, said she so awfully that Mary Beasley on the music stool wriggled her spine. The third line should be one crescendo. These are the different parts of a song. One crescendo. Fleetly, fleetly, music's gay measure, breaking on the first word of the last line, passes. And then on the word away, you must begin to die, to fade, until the listening ear is nothing more than a faint whisper. You can slow down as much as you like, almost on the last line. Now, please. So she explains the entire process of how the song has to be sung. There is nothing to explain here except that Miss Meadows is explaining to the students how to sing the song, how each word has to be pronounced, how the lines have to be drawn out, and how, with more expression, the song has to be sung. But one thing which is remarkable in this is that she is trying to emphasize on certain words and phrases like drearer, and then the listening ear is nothing more than a faint whisper. And then she says, you must begin to die, to fade. What is dying inside her? What is fading inside her? Her hopes are fading. Her hopes are dying. Her hopes about marriage, about settling down at the age of 30 are fading, dying. She's grown hopeless from within, and that is what is reflecting in the way she is instructing the children in her class. Again, the two light taps. She lifted her arms again. Fast, too fast. And the idea of settling down fills me with nothing but disgust. Just imagine. On one hand, she is conducting the song lesson, and on the other hand, she's thinking about what Basil had written, that the idea of settling down fills me with nothing but disgust. Disgust was what he had written. That was as good as to say their engagement was definitely broken off. Broken off, their engagement. People had been surprised enough that she had got engaged. The science mistress would not believe it at first. Well, when she got engaged, the science mistress was the one who did not believe it. And so also the others, to some extent, and some were quite surprised that at the age of 30 she had finally managed to get engaged. So nobody had been as surprised as she. She was 30, Basil was 25. Now this was the age difference. She was older than her would-be husband Basil by 5 years. It had been a miracle, simply a miracle, to hear him say, as they walked home from church that very dark night, somehow or other, I have got fond of you. And he had taken hold of the end of her ostrich feather boa. Passes away from the listening ear. Well, they both were coming home from church, and Basil was walking her home when he started saying that he had started growing fond of her, and then went on to hold on to the scarf, which was in the shape of a snake. It was made of ostrich feather, and he held on to an end of that scarf, and then he said what he had to say. That is, he proposed to her. Repeat, repeat, said Miss Meadows. More expression, girls, once more. Fast, too fast. The older girls were crimson. They had already turned red in the face. Crimson is deep red color. Some of the younger ones began to cry. It was too much of a strain on the little children who were being made to sing again and again. The older girls, their faces had turned red, and the younger girls, some of them had started crying. You remember that there were three classes present inside the music hall. So the youngest or the junior most class, the girls from that class particularly, they almost started or had already started crying. Big spots of rain blew against the windows outside. It was very windy. The willows were waving in the wind, and now it had started raining too, and the raindrops were falling on the window panes from outside. Rain, wind, blowing away of good times, coming in of bad weather. Rainfall, synonymous to tears. Miss Meadows is not crying. The small girls are crying, and outside nature is crying. And Miss Meadows is crying, no doubt, but inside, not visibly, but inside. So, big spots of rain blew against the windows, and one could hear the willows whispering, "Not that I did not love you." The murmuring sound made by the willows in the wind seemed to be saying these words again and again. It's all because of what she is going through. Her mind is making her imagine things which are not really happening. Well, the weather is bad, the wind is blowing, no doubt, it's raining outside, no doubt, but the willows saying, "Not that I do not love you," is impossible. "But my darling, if you love me," thought Miss Meadows, "I don't mind how much it is. Love me as little as you like." But she knew he didn't love her. Not to have cared enough to scratch out the word disgust so that she couldn't read it. Soon autumn yields unto winter drearer. She would have to leave the school too. She could never face the science mistress or the girls after it got known. She would have to disappear somewhere. Passes away. She has to run away. I have told you in the introduction to this story already in a previous video that the humiliation will be too much for Miss Meadows to bear, particularly when she thinks about the science mistress. She could not possibly face that lady because that lady was the one who would make the most fun of her. The voices began to die, to fade, to whisper, to vanish. Suddenly, the door opened. A little girl in blue, she was dressed in blue, walked fussily up the aisle, hanging her head, biting her lips, and twisting the silver bangle on her red little wrist. She came up the steps and stood before Miss Meadows. "Well, Monica, what is it?" So this girl, her name is Monica, and she has come to say something to Miss Meadows. Let's see. "Oh, if you please, Miss Meadows," said the little girl, gasping. "Miss Watt wants to see you in the mistress's room." "Very well," said Miss Meadows, and she called to the girls. "I shall put you on your honor to talk quietly while I am away." She tells the class, "Mind your honor, be decent. If you want to talk, you can talk, but very softly, gently, properly. Don't create too much of noise. As I have been called, I have to go and meet the headmistress." But the children were already too subdued to do anything else. Most of them were blowing their noses because, as we have already been told, that the younger ones in particular were already sobbing or crying. Now, Miss Meadows walks along the corridor once again, and once again the description of the corridors being very silent and cold. They echoed to Miss Meadows' steps as she was walking. There was nobody else in the corridor, and there was this echo created by her footsteps. The headmistress sat at her desk. For a moment she did not look up. She was, as usual, disentangling her eyeglasses, which had got caught in her lace tie. "Sit down, Miss Meadows," she said very kindly. "Well, the telegram has come, so naturally the headmistress is trying to be very kind and gentle with Miss Meadows, because a telegram always comes when there is an emergency, and that's the reason why she treats her kindly." And then she picked up a pink envelope from the blotting pad. What is a blotting pad? In those times, this story dates back to a long time ago from now, so naturally 100 years old. So naturally, ballpoint pens or gel pens did not exist. People wrote with ink pens, fountain pens, and so a blotting pad which was fitted with blotting paper was always kept on the writing desk, so that if you spilled ink on paper, you could always soak it up using the blotting pad. So anyway, this envelope, it was pink in color, because a telegram is something which is something more serious than any letter. So the color code is pink, and it was lying on the blotting pad. "I sent for you just now because this telegram has come for you." "A telegram for me, Miss Wet?" Basil, he had committed suicide. This was the thought which crossed Miss Meadows' mind. Must be from the family or friends of Basil to inform me that he has committed suicide, decided Miss Meadows. Her hand flew out, but Miss Wet held the telegram back a moment. "I hope it's not bad news," she said, so more than kindly, and Miss Meadows tore it open. "Pay no attention to letter, must have been mad. Bought hat stand today, Basil." This was written in the telegram. Now the telegram was always written with limited number of words just to convey the main message, and that's why it's not a complete sentence. Pay no attention to letter. Don't pay attention to the letter which I sent you earlier. I must have been mad in having written that letter. I have already bought the hat stand, that owl shaped hat stand, indicating that he was very much into the engagement and was looking forward to getting married with Miss Meadows. She read. She couldn't take her eyes off the telegram. "I do hope it's nothing very serious," said Miss Wet, leaning forward. "Oh no, thank you, Miss Wet," blushed Miss Meadows. She's already blushing. The color has returned to her cheeks. She's suddenly so happy. All morning she was upset, she was depressed, and now suddenly she is filled with this unexpected happiness. "Oh no, thank you, Miss Wet. It's nothing bad at all. It's..." And she gave an apologetic little laugh. "It's from my fiancé." Saying that, there was a pause. "I see," said Miss Wet, and another pause. Then she continued, "You have 15 minutes more of your class, Miss Meadows, haven't you?" "Yes, Miss Wet." She got up. She half ran towards the door. "Oh, just 1 minute, Miss Meadows," said Miss Wet. "I must say I don't approve of my teachers having telegrams sent to them in school hours, unless in case of very bad news such as death," explained Miss Wet, "or a very serious accident or something to that effect. Good news, Miss Meadows, will always keep, Means good news can always wait. There's no need to send a telegram to convey a good news. It can be conveyed after working hours." So from this we can understand that Miss Wet, the headmistress, was very strict in matters of conducting the classes. She was very strict with her teachers. On the wings of hope, of love, of joy, Miss Meadows sped back to the music hall, up the aisle, up the steps, over to the piano. She was so happy, suddenly so happy. She rushed back to her class. "Page 32, Mary." Mary Beasley, remember the girl? Teacher's pet, her favorite student. Page 32. Suddenly the page number changes. Page 32. And picking up the yellow chrysanthemum, she picks up that flower which Mary had brought for her but she hadn't accepted. Now she picks it up. She held it to her lips to hide her smile. She was trying to control her happiness, lest she smiled in front of the children and the children thought very odd of it. She put the chrysanthemum by its stem between her lips. Then she turned to the girls, rapped with her baton. Page 32, girls, page 32. Hurry up, hurry up. I'm so desperate. Sing a happy song. So that is what happens to be there on page 32. We come here today with flowers overladen, with baskets of fruit and ribbons to boot, to congratulate. It's a different song. It's a happy song, a song of congratulations. Of course, she must congratulate herself that she is engaged to Basil after all, and that she's going to marry Basil after all. Stop, stop, cried Miss Meadows. This is awful, this is dreadful. And she beamed at her girls. Beamed? Smiled broadly. With a broad mouth, she smiled at them. What's the matter with you all? Think, girls, think of what you are singing. Use your imaginations. With flowers overladen, baskets of fruit and ribbons to boot. She started singing herself. All this time she was so upset and now so happy. And congratulate, Miss Meadows broke off. Don't look so doleful, girls. Don't look so upset, so sad, so depressed, girls. Has she forgotten? She was the cause of it. Before she left the class, she made them cry. And after she returns, she is expecting them not to look doleful. It ought to sound warm, joyful, eager. Congratulate. Once more, quickly, all together, now then. And this time, Miss Meadows' voice sounded over all the other voices, full, deep, glowing with expression. Why? Because she was very happy. So you saw the change in her mood as soon as she received the telegram. I had discussed in the introduction of this story earlier. So if you had watched that video and if you had listened to what I had explained, it's not difficult for you to understand. So the changing phases of one's life reflect in one's behavior. Miss Meadows is the best example of that. Catherine Mansfield does a tremendous job by highlighting human psychology in this manner through this short story, The Singing Lesson, published in 1920. So that's it. With that, we come to the end of this short story. I will be giving you important questions from your workbook afterwards. As of now, let's call it a day. Thank you very much.